15-year-old Emily Carter had always been a strong-willed girl. She was smart, outspoken, and fiercely independent. But lately, she had picked up a bad habit, using foul language. It started with small words here and there, words she had heard her classmates use at school. At first, she only whispered them under her breath, but soon they slipped out in everyday conversation. Her mother, Mrs. Carter, had warned her several times. "Emily, I don't want to hear that kind of language in this house," she had said firmly. "It's disrespectful and it's not how I raised you." Emily would roll her eyes and mumble a half-hearted apology, but the warnings never really sank in. She didn't see what the big deal was. It was just words. Everyone said them. Then came the day when she pushed too far. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Emily was in the living room texting her friends while watching TV. Her mother had asked her to clean her room earlier that morning, but she had ignored it, promising herself she'd do it later. "Emily," her mother called from the kitchen. "Have you cleaned your room yet?" Emily groaned, barely looking up from her phone. "Ugh, I'll do it later, Mom." Mrs. Carter walked into the living room, arms crossed. "No, you'll do it now. I've asked you 3 times already." Annoyed, Emily huffed and muttered under her breath, "This is so stupid." "What did you say?" her mother asked, narrowing her eyes. Emily, feeling bold, scoffed. "I said this is stupid. Why do I have to clean my room right now? It's not even that messy." Mrs. Carter's expression darkened, but before she could respond, Emily made a terrible mistake. Frustrated and wanting to push back, she blurted out, "This is so fucking dumb!" The room went silent. Emily immediately regretted it. She had never sworn like that in front of her mother before. She knew it was wrong, but the words had slipped out before she could stop them. Mrs. Carter took a deep breath, her face unreadable. "Excuse me?" Emily swallowed hard. I didn't mean..." But her mother had heard enough. "Go to my room, right now." Emily's heart pounded. "Mom, Now, Emily." The sharpness in her mother's voice left no room for argument. With a sinking feeling, Emily put down her phone and walked to her mother's bedroom. She had a terrible feeling about what was coming. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, fidgeting nervously. She knew her mother wasn't one to let things slide. She had warned her countless times, and now she had crossed the line. A few minutes later, Mrs. Carter entered the room, holding a wooden paddle that had been in their family for years. It wasn't used often, but when it was, the lesson was never forgotten. "Stand up," her mother ordered. Emily hesitated. "Mom, please, I didn't mean to..." "You knew better, Emily," her mother interrupted. "I have warned you repeatedly about your language. You chose to ignore me, and now you will face the consequences." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry." "I'm sure you are," Mrs. Carter said, "but sorry doesn't erase disrespect. Actions have consequences, and you need to understand that." She pointed to the bed. "Bend over." Emily's hands shook as she obeyed, leaning over the bed and gripping the blanket tightly. Her heart pounded as she felt her mother place a hand on her back to keep her steady. Then, the first swat landed. A sharp sting spread across her backside, making her yelp. It wasn't unbearable, but it was enough to make her realize her mother was serious. "You will not," her mother said sternly, "use that kind of language in this house again." By the time the punishment was over, Emily's backside was sore and her pride was stung even worse. She sniffled, rubbing her eyes, feeling both embarrassed and regretful. Her mother sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Emily, I don't enjoy punishing you, but I will not let you grow up thinking you can speak however you want, especially not in a disrespectful way." Emily nodded, wiping away a stray tear. "I know. I'm sorry, Mom, I really am." "I believe you," her mother said, pulling her into a hug. "But next time, think before you speak. Words have power, and you need to use them wisely." That night, as Emily lay in bed, she replayed the entire situation in her head. She realized just how much she had disrespected her mother. Her mother had always been loving and supportive, and Emily had repaid that with eye rolls and foul language. She promised herself she would do better. The next morning, Emily walked into the kitchen and hugged her mother. "Good morning, Mom," she said softly. "I just want to say again that I'm sorry for yesterday." I know I was wrong." Mrs. Carter smiled and kissed the top of her head. "I appreciate that, sweetheart. I love you." "I love you too," Emily said, meaning it more than ever.